Hello, hello, and welcome back to Artpop Talk. I'm Gianna.
And I'm Bianca.
We've been waiting for you all summer.
And we're so glad you're finally here.
Bianca and I have been training hard for the past month, and we're going for the gold. In today's episode, we are talking about all things Olympic. Starting with some background context, I'm diving into some historic competition, going back to the Byzantine Empire, and then bridging the time gap with the Olympics as we know it today.
Yes, in tandem with looking at this history, we are looking at the visuals from our current Olympic session. From the Skims and Ralph Lauren clothing contracts to how the Olympic and Paralympic architecture changes the physical landscape of the cities who host it and the repercussions on human displacement. Oh, Gianna, let's art pop talk.
Yay!
Oh my gosh. Does it feel weird to be back?
Yeah, it feels very weird. I feel like I'm back to day one learning how to talk into a microphone again.
I know, it's very strange. I feel good. I feel really, really excited for today's episode. It's like everything has changed, but nothing has changed.
Yeah.
So tell us about your break. How was your July? Happy August.
Happy August. Oh man, August is... Things are happening in August, but I was telling Bianca the other day, August can kind of kiss my ass. I'm very ready for September. I am moving apartments next week again. Otherwise, I've taken the break to become more settled in Tulsa. So, work is going well. Bianca and I have been staying busy, always working at APTHQ. So that's
For
been
sure.
great. But yeah, you've been a busy bee.
I have been so busy. July has been very fun. I'm glad that all of my trips and such I was able to take in July. Now I feel like, whoop, things are going to shut down again.
No, I know.
I'm a little nervous about that, but it's been great. I got to go to the beach a few times. I was up in New England this past week. I was in Vermont. I was in Maine. I was in New Hampshire. And I went down to Richmond. I went to the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts with our former PA, Miss Audrey Kaminsky, and we saw a good friend, Catherine. It was so nice to see her. I know Catherine is a little art pop tart, so it was so nice. It was so fun. And Gianna, I also went to a movie theater for the first time, not just during COVID, but for me, the first time in years. I went back to a movie theater.
Yeah, and I am very angsty to see Black Widow for probably obvious reasons. Wink, wink to future episodes. Because I don't
Stay tuned.
want to buy it on Disney Plus, as some of the pop news while we were on our break was that Scarlett Johansson is suing Disney, also paving the way for Emma Stone and someone else. I think was thinking
Emily Blunt. I think
for
for Jungle Cruise.
right, which to me is just like another kid action movie that The Rock is in. I can't say I'm too excited about it.
Unfortunately, I bought Jungle Cruise on Disney Plus before I knew that Emily Blunt was being included in this lawsuit. Otherwise, I wouldn't have bought it on Disney Plus.
Oh, you did buy it?
Yes, because Andrew and I just watched The Mummy. It was his first time watching the Mummy movies.
Oh, The Rock is in that one.
Yes,
Yeah.
so The Rock is the Scorpion King. And then we were like, oh my gosh, we should watch Jungle Cruise, because we were kind of in that adventure movie mindset. I have thoughts about it. I don't know if we have time to get into it. I have a lot of thoughts about it from an adult perspective, just the kind of like, oh, just because it's a woman who wears pants and her brother is gay, like, doesn't mean that they're bad people. And I feel like it's like the white saviorism is still like so present in this movie.
Interesting.
But it's like excused with the fact that like Emily Blunt is like a pioneering woman. I'm like, white British people, even ladies, still like aren't cool back in like 1918 or whatever. It's just like,
right, kind of has like a Jane Tarzan vibe. Like it's still like British people like coming in to capture animals and also like colonize jungle people.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, and it's about kind of conquistadors are involved. And at one point I was like, are we supposed to be like feeling bad for them? I was like, I don't know about this. But that doesn't excuse the fact that Emily Blunt perhaps is not getting paid.
Yeah.
Because that's not right either. So this will be an exciting topic coming up in 2 weeks, where we'll have Boy of APT, Andrew James, coming back to talk about Black Widow and Loki. He's very excited to talk with you all again. He is so pumped to be back on the show. So if you can and you feel safe and all that kind of stuff, you're vaccinated, go see Black Widow in theaters.
Yeah.
And
I want
support
to
Miss
try
Scarjo.
to go see it in a drive-in. Theban and I might go see it in a
Yes.
drive-in, but I will definitely have watched it by the time we talk about it on Artpop Talk. But literally, I mean, of course, a lot of stuff happened in the month of July. A lot of great
Yes.
pop culture news that Bianca and I are dying to talk about. First and foremost, House of Gucci trailer.
Whew. Whew. Oh my gosh.
Thoughts?
So I have a funny story, I guess. We were at dinner, and oddly enough, we were in this town called Keene in New Hampshire, and we arrived, and it just so happened to be Harry Potter week, and the whole town was having this like really funny Harry Potter festival because it was taking place over Harry Potter's birthday.
Oh.
And so this whole town was like decked out in Harry Potter. It was really cute. I mean, I was all for it, but it was just so random. We just got there and everyone was like dressed up. We were like, what's going on? They also have a Yule Ball, which I thought was very
that's
cute.
cute.
But we were in Keene at this Harry Potter week festival when the House of Gucci trailer dropped. So I saw Gaga post, the poster for Gucci on her Instagram. And so then we found out that the trailer was dropping that night. So we were out at dinner and we were drinking these cocktails that were like house themed. So I had like my cute little Hufflepuff drink, which was very delicious. But we're drinking these cocktails and Andrew pulls out his phone and he's like, oh my gosh, the trailer dropped. And he puts his phone in my face and I felt bad, but I like screamed at him. And the waitress was coming over to like deliver our food and I was like, not yet, because I didn't want to be out in public watching the trailer. I wanted to be like in my element. And then all the Harry Potterness was happening. I was like, this is not the right vibe. Like, I just really need to be like back at our hotel room, sitting down in the bed, watching the trailer in peace so I can watch it several times. But I felt so bad because it was just this like instinct reaction and I like screamed at it and the waitress came by and I was like, no, not yet. So Andrew, I'm very sorry I yelled at you in public, but
Wow.
but I did go back to our hotel room and watch the trailer several times and it was great.
Hilarious. Fantastic story.
Yeah.
Glad you got a Hufflepuff cocktail. Yeah, it's so good. Bianca and I were joking earlier about how if this sound isn't on my TikTok in 5 minutes, I'm going to throw the biggest bitch fit. And sure enough,
Truly.
yeah, Bianca made a good TikTok this morning. Truly iconic. So hats off to
Thank you. I'm just so excited. And then I've also been seeing on TikTok videos of the character that Gaga is playing and just like the real life woman and then how Gaga's doing it and the clothing. I just like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited for the clothing. And also I didn't know, I guess, that Jared Leto was in the movie. Mm-hmm. And I've been seeing funny comments on his Instagram, like, how is this you, And then I've also been seeing, like, people are or Jared might be upset that Gaga is about to outact him, so.
Well, she always understands the assignment, so don't know what to tell him there.
Truly, oh my gosh. How do we feel about, I know it's so early, but it comes out November 24th, so that is prime Oscar season. Mm-hmm. Do you think that it's already Oscar buzz?
Yeah, I think so. I do, because I just don't think Gaga is at the point where she is just like wasting her time with certain roles. Like, you know what I mean? Like when Gaga did A Star Is Born, like that made sense. Like she's a singer, like she fit the vibe and kind of the history and lineage of that story. Like she's an Italian American person, like from New York, like
an Italian fashion icon.
Yeah, like she fits a vibe for that. Like that's, you know, we can talk about Ridley Scott and how like we're not super pumped about that aspect of House of Gucci, but I don't think would be doing this if it wasn't for that icon moment. And I think the same could be said for like American Horror Story, like slay vampire,
the
like
Emmy,
yeah. So I don't know. That is just my extremely biased opinion, but I can't give you I can't give you a different one.
She will be nominated for Best Actress.
Leftist art news over here.
Some truly biased information we're feeding you.
It is.
So, do you think that she's going to put out a new song for House of Gucci?
Oh, honestly,
I feel like it would be like a fucking bop, like this like Gucci, like murderous, kind of dark and twisty song from Gaga.
Yeah, I really hadn't thought about it, but I mean, obviously I'd be here for it. I was thinking how like it's super fucked up how we, you know, are so thirsty for this like murderous fashion story. I feel like it really is along the same lines of like American Horror Story. Yeah, like slit my throat, Gaga. Like I dare you.
Stab me in the heart.
Stab me in the heart.
Please do.
But
yes. Well, I'm
like, is it bad that I rather support like a super like privileged, murderous, mob survived like Italian fashion icon house than like a white Nazi in her Parisian home?
Oh yeah, 1,000%.
Yeah.
You know, Gucci over Chanel
any day.
Every day.
For a day.
So the film comes out November 24th. Of course, Gianna and I will keep updating you along the way. I don't know if we're going to get another trailer. I mean, that would be fabulous. Maybe more images. Maybe a single from Gaga before the soundtrack comes out. I'm so excited. And you guys better believe that the first week of December, we are having a House of Gucci episode. So, you know, add that to your calendars. I'm sure we can get, you know, APT cousin and fashion expert Joel Porro on the podcast to talk to us about Gucci. So I just can't wait.
Yeah, super excited. But a lot of other things happened this month as well. Industry Baby came out, the song and the music video, and then Billie Eilish released the album Happier Than Ever. Have you had a chance to listen to the whole album?
No, I haven't. So that's definitely on my list of items to check off.
Yeah, I've gone through it, I think, like once. It's kind of hard when, you know, the first time you listen to an album, everything kind of has a tendency to like blur together a little bit.
Yeah.
And she has that very kind of, you know, soft-spoken element that we love to see from Billie. But I feel like that pairing so much with like all of her songs, they're blurring together a little bit for me. But I did watch the music video for Happier Than Ever, and I did like it.
Oh, cool.
And I'm kind of here for a lot of this new, I don't know, visual era of like Billie. I think a lot of people were like, oh, you know, I miss my like black and green haired Billie, like take me back to that phase. But
I don't think that's sustainable.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at someone like Gaga too, not that they need comparing in any way.
Well, everybody's
going
gonna enter like a new look, a new generation. I mean, we talk about so much like the Bangers Miley, the Malibu Miley, and now the Broken Heart Miley. Like, I love a good transition, so I'm here for it.
Yeah, definitely. And also, we want to note, too, that Halsey released the album cover for her upcoming album at the Met, which is big art news, but we are planning a full-length episode on the album and the cover art, hopefully the music video, the last week of August. So that will be coming up as well. But we did not forget about Halsey.
No, not at all. How could we?
So, Gianna, are we ready for some art news?
I'm so ready for some art news.
Oh my gosh, I miss art news. Wow, that feels good to hear. Love a good screaming art news. Keeping in theme this week, we've got a little art news coming out of Tokyo. So this happened about a week before the opening ceremonies took place, but I thought it was still cool to share and something I wanted to get your take on, Gianna, as we think about public art, safe art, and this ongoing corona crisis thanks to Miss Delta variant. So about 2 weeks ago now, residents of Tokyo may have spotted a giant floating face in the skyline above a park in the Shibuya district as part of the 2021 Tokyo Festival, which was organized in advance of the Olympics. So essentially, this was a hot air balloon that took the shape of a black and white portrait of an anonymous person's face. And the face was actually taken from 1,000 images that were submitted online. And they were chosen, this face was chosen and constructed by the Japanese artist collective May. And May is made up of 3 core members. And they, quote, work on the realization of artworks that manipulate perceptions of the physical world. Their installations provoke awareness of the inherent unreliability and uncertainty in the world around us. The idea for this piece in particular came to one of the members named Haruka Kojin in a dream when she was a student in junior high. So this is what her quote reads. Amid our current crisis, which has been going on for more than a year, the clear structure to plan and execute something that has previously supported us is collapsing. Even though we are taking steps to navigate this reality, the feeling of being real in our daily lives is as uncertain and unclear as if it was far into the future. The work has been met with some mixed reception apparently, and make sure you check out the images that we post on our resources page and on our Instagram. It's very interesting and uncanny and a little eerie. Some of the reception says that this piece is likened to Hanging Balloons, which is a story from a Japanese horror manga where floating heads with metal noses set out to kill their human doppelgangers. So, Gianna, I'm curious, I guess, what you think about this work. I feel like I guess I have mixed feelings about it. So part of the artist statement is also that there's no warning for when this will pop up. It's just kind of a sporadic
I hate that.
floating head that comes up, kind of like, I don't know, the eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckleburg and, you know, Gatsby in 1984, kind of Big Brother vibes, I guess. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that's a little bit eerie for sure. But I mean, topics that we have talked about on the pod before, something that we're fascinated in is that idea of, I think, surveillance. But I think pairing that into a human form or a face is quite interesting.
But there's nothing about this that tells you you're being surveilled. I mean, it's just a hot air balloon, but with a camera, we're around cameras every single day, and we don't feel that kind of looming, or at least I don't necessarily feel looming presence when I, you know, walk by a camera or use my phone. But this has this puts like a human face to that idea.
Well, and I think it's like the humanoid aspect, which is why it's kind of leading me to that conclusion. And also just kind of leading me to other personal conclusion when she states, even though we are taking steps to navigate this reality, the feeling of being real in our daily lives is as uncertain and unclear as if it were far into the future. It makes me feel like a topic that's just been on my mind lately. We talk so much about identity from an artist perspective and in an artwork and how that helps us navigate the art world, but also through a lot of other like meditation practices and what is going to help you lead a good life, there's also this sense of like no self. There's also no self. You have your identity, you have your perspectives, but there's also that consciousness of having no identity too, that you're kind of stripping yourself from in order to lead a good life. And I don't know why this is kind of reminding me of that. I think it's that merging of different facial elements that are combined just to make this being that is sporadically watching you, or is put into the ether when you don't know it and when you're not expecting it. There's something about that that for some reason is kind of leading me to these other thoughts that I've been thinking about.
Yeah. I think in like a positive light, I suppose, just thinking about a collective like this putting art out into the world where, we all seem to be fading back into an unsafe, closed environment once again. And I hope that public art like this just maintains itself in general. I really like public art broadly speaking, I guess, but now it does have that, especially with the artist statement, it does have this element of kind of timeliness and thinking about the pandemic, and particularly in the environment of Japan, where there's a lot of vaccine hesitancy or people aren't able to get the vaccine. So just lots of different layered
I guess why also
feelings.
I guess maybe why right now I'm feeling also perhaps a little bit conflicted is we'll get into these other topics that feel a little pessimistic, the repercussions of the Olympics, and we're thinking so much about the future and what this moment means, but also this work of art is telling us to look at the future. What are going to be the end result of our actions? And yet as we'll get into, some not great things are happening right now.
I just thought it was interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was a great piece for Art News. All right, everyone, we're going to take a little break, and when we come back, we're talking about the Olympic and Paralympic Games. Today's Artpop Talk is brought to you by Hungry Harvest. Why waste when you can create? With Hungry Harvest, you'll discover fruits and veggies you've never tried. Learn to use every part of every plant and shake up your meal prep game with delicious produce and kitchen staples delivered right to your door. Each harvest saves 10 pounds of produce from going to waste and helps support local hunger-solving organizations in your area.
Boxes start at just $15 and are available in a variety of sizes and options, including organic, which I love. That's good for you, good for the planet, good for your wallet. Get 50% off your first harvest when you sign up with promo code APT50 at hungryharvest.net. That's code APT50 at hungryharvest.net for 50% off your first order.
And we're back with today's Artpop Talk. All about the Olympics. What we like and don't like about the Olympics, its global importance, its pop culture significance, and with a little historical help from what is known as the Nika riots or Nika revolt, with its connections to the Byzantine chariot racing extravaganza.
Eleganza extravaganza.
History, as always, will help show us why these grand events and spirited competitions are important in the visual world. So, shall I start with the Nika Revolt?
Oh, please do.
I think I shall.
I love a good revolt.
Oh, boy. And this is nothing, at least I think, if not a good story. But the takeaway will be about how we politicize sports. So I'm going to read from a website, which I also found a little audio blurb about the Nika riots, and I'll also link that for a resources page if you guys want to check it out as well. During the days of the Roman Empire, leaders tried to win favor by putting on elaborate games. Gladiator contests had mostly died out by the 6th century, but most cities across the empire had their very own chariot racing stadium. The biggest of all was right in Constantinople. It was called the Hippodrome. It was about 4 times the size of a football field and shaped like a massive horseshoe. So it's like really, really super long. Head over to our resources post to check that image out. It held around 100,000 people, and a secret passageway connected the imperial palace directly to the imperial box where the emperor would watch the chariot race, from his special little seat. Down below, up to 12 charioteers, each on a chariot pulled by 4 horses, raced around a track about 150 feet wide. At the time, there were 2 rival chariot racing teams. Literally, the Blues and the Greens.
I think that's a great mascot. Like, why do we need all these goofy looking characters, some of which are not too great in general? Just go back to colors.
Yeah.
Everybody likes a good color.
Yeah. I was, on the red team when I played soccer, and you didn't hear me throwing a bitch fit about it. So both these teams had a big following in Constantinople, and this is where sports and politics really become intertwined. To quote this article, Story of the Nika Riots, there is one group of historians who essentially say that the Blues and Greens were effectively almost prototype political parties. The Blues were a sort of party of the authorities. The emperor himself, Justinian, was a well-known partisan of the Blues. And the Greens were the party of, you could say, the people. Justinian was focused on taking back the Roman Empire's lost territory at this time. But war obviously costs a lot of money. So Justinian decided to raise taxes even on wealthy people. So literally everybody was pissed about this. The citizens of Constantinople were really frustrated, including people who were in line with the blue team. Well, what happens when a bunch of sports people get all worked up, whether they are angry or even celebrating their victory? They take to the streets for whatever reason and, just get a little crazy. So what happened in about 532 CE was that there was a fight in the Hippodrome between supporters of the blue and the green team. Imperial guards basically stepped in to separate the two sides, and this led to a trial. And eventually 7 men were actually sentenced to be hanged or sentenced to death. So the first 5 men were successfully executed. And for some reason, when it came to the last 2, these 2 guys were supposed to be hanged or, sentenced to the gallows, as they say. So for some reason, the gallows collapsed, and the spectators and supporters of the Blues and the Greens took this as a sign from God that meant these men were not supposed to die. So the 2 men were actually rescued by the crowd and taken to a church to be hidden. What happened here was, for the first time, the Blues and Greens came together to rescue their fellow comrades united against the government. So things start to progress from here. They're not mad at each other anymore for whatever reason. Now they're mad at the government for, killing fellow sports
as they
people.
should be.
So at the next chariot race, after all this stuff happened, the partisans of the Blues and Greens returned to the Hippodrome. Rather than fighting each other, they suddenly started to show signs of being on the same side. History tells us that everyone started yelling "Nika, Nika," which in Greek means win. This wouldn't be abnormal to shout out at a chariot race. However, they were clearly directing their chant towards Emperor Justinian. This was done in order to suggest their victory over saving the 2 men. So after this happened, Justinian decided to shut down the hippodrome. And in response, this is when the rioting took place and citizens started literally starting to burn Constantinople to the ground. So days go by, and to try to appease the mob, Justinian dismisses his hated tax collector, thinking that would make everybody happy and everything would go back to normal. It did not. And on the 5th day of the riot, the Blues and Greens actually appointed a new rival emperor who was seated on the throne inside of the hippodrome. And you can understand why this would be like a little bit scary that the rioters had taken over the hippodrome, because it had that connection path to the like imperial palace or
Palace.
so at this point the article also brings in Theodora,
Our queen,
wife of Justinian, where we have this alleged but historic phrase from her as she shames Justinian, who is considering fleeing. Quote, "If you, my lord, wish to save your skin, you will have no difficulty in doing so. We are rich. There is the sea. There too are our ships. But consider first whether, when you reach safety, you will regret that you did not choose death in preference. As for me, I stand by the ancient saying, the purple is the noblest winding sheet." Basically, don't be a coward and die for your empire. According to one apocrypha, which is a type of biblical book, I suppose there are many, received by early churches as part of the Greek version of the Old Testament, says that the Blues were bribed into supporting Justinian, once again as this reminder that the emperor once supported their side. Really, we aren't sure. It could have been more brutal or violent than perhaps persuasive. We also aren't sure exactly, but we are told that 30,000 people were killed in the hippodrome in less than a day. And this also included the newly appointed rival emperor, who was executed and his body was tossed into the sea. So this marked the end of the insurrection or the uprising in the Byzantine Empire. This also kind of ended chariot racing. Justinian's power was once again secure. And then as an extra screw you to the people of Constantinople, he even reappointed that tax collector. So Justinian also ruled for another 3 decades after this until his death in 565 CE. And Justinian and Theodora left the empire in a pretty powerful position. And then again, chariot racing did not recover from what we now call the Nika riots or the Nika revolt. To recap, it seems like this situation got out of control real fast. In this case, things went horribly wrong when people got caught up in not only the excitement of the game, but also politicizing their teams and also putting their own theological debate into the mix as well, which I'm not going to get into so much today, but it's like religion and politics and sports like all mixed up in one. To me, this is a lot of pressure to place on a couple of guys riding in a mobile cart. But this is just one woman's opinion, as always. But this pressure that we place on athleticism or athletes has changed some, but I think is still present. In recent years, including this year, I think athletes have been speaking about their own vulnerability more and more, which better humanizes them and hopefully the industry. But taking our own kind of entertainment broadly in terms of quality of life, this has expanded. And in terms of just sports, we have a lot of more options to involve ourselves in if you choose to do so. But politicizing these sports teams and athletes more individualistically is still a foundation of our consumer world. Some examples you might be familiar with are the USA women's soccer team. Why do we love this team so much? Why do we want to support them? Well, we want to support them because they've spoken out about fair wage, equality in the league, They are also composed of love stories between players and also hot baddie lesbians that are invited to speak at the White House because of their advocacy. Love to see it.
Mm-hmm.
What about Colin Kaepernick kneeling down during the national anthem in solidarity with other minorities and their treatment in the NFL? After a total heartbreaking backlash against Colin and his, so to speak, disrespect towards the flag, only after a period of time, or after you could say the controversy died down a bit, brands like Nike chose to use Colin for one of their ad campaigns. Yes, you could say to show their support, but also to use that moment in pop culture and Colin himself for profit. That single moment changed his trajectory in sports. Instead of being able to play football, this once quarterback is now set for a path of advocacy and philanthropy. Just because I thought it'd be nice to share what he's doing now, he joined the board of directors at a popular blogging platform, Medium. He wrote a memoir, I also believe, about his career on and off the field. He also opened up his own publishing company to print socially conscious literature. So whether or not he returns to the field or is ever signed again, his place in history in that moment, because of that one action of kneeling in sports, will last forever. And we've seen the impact of that in sports moving forward. So bringing it back to the Olympics, I wanted to share some examples that are politicizing things that are maybe more internal to what's going on in this competition, more related to sports issues. For example, our girl Simone Biles is choosing not to participate in some of the games because she is listening to her mental health. Or as the Norway's women's beach handball team refusing to wear bikini bottoms as they make them feel uncomfortable, and then them getting fined for wearing the inappropriate or improper uniform, which were basically biker shorts. When you start to look at the Olympics, Paralympics, or sports generally as these forms of entertainment and the issues and activisms that stem out from that, I'm going to stress that maybe this is just my bias, again, from not being a huge sports fan or not being very even patriotic all the time. Perhaps I'm more inclined to look at the larger implications of athleticism, but still I think those are the moments that are driving our history and creating or shaping people to what we refer as icons.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's really important because the people who are not necessarily always involved in the game itself do have a public perception of athletes as celebrities. Like in my view, because I am not necessarily a avid sports watcher, my perception of those icons comes from the other types of work that they do. So yeah, that's super interesting. Thank you for sharing, Gianna.
Yeah, absolutely. And it got me thinking a little bit about Bo Burnham's Inside, where he makes this joke about, you're not just buying Wheat Thins. What does Wheat Thins stand for? You're buying into that brand. And I think so much, that's what we ask for from these people that we call icons or have this celebrity status. We want to support them not just because of their athleticism and what they've achieved in sports, but it's everything else that surrounds them.
So in thinking about that, I kind of want to switch gears a little bit because it is a big, I guess, circular problem that athletes are also part of another system, right? So while they are independent people and can make their own choices and be supporters of this and that, they are doing a job, and like everyone who, participates in a workplace environment, they also adhere to different rules put forth by whatever system or workplace or league that they are involved in. So I was thinking about that politicization of sports and how I wanted to talk about some other icons that relate to the Olympic and Paralympic Games today regarding fashion in particular and that type of marketing. So I was reading this Forbes article by Stefan Rabimov, who also covered Olympic fashion at Rio in 2016, where the Zika virus was also of some concern. And he says this year, quote, "For the teams on site, it is a unique opportunity to rally national pride at a time when many countries are struggling with post-pandemic morale." So thinking about kind of mascots and color, like Gianna going back to the green and blue, there is something that is put forth by the clothing, the uniform, the mascot, you know, with the Olympics and Paralympics in particular. It's obviously by country, but... And so Gianna, tell me your thoughts on this, but maybe it's just this year in particular that I feel this comparison is too relatable to a type of Hunger Games situation where the fashion is so hyped up to get us all excited about our own districts, like just to watch them battle coronavirus. I feel very uncomfortable with like watching the Olympic ceremony or opening ceremonies and watching these teams come out in this garb, like, you know, we're about to send them off into like a far worse battle than normal.
Yeah, I really get that. There are some other aspects that I feel are very Hunger Game-ish, which is very much all about the perception. It's about infrastructure. It's about modernization. And it's like we build this whole new empire, and in relation to Tokyo, we make renovations to that empire, and we have this perception of the capital, but we are also going to do that but in order to make that happen, we have to displace minority and poorer and less privileged people in our community to do so. I also think that the Olympics, or this grand event, has this perception, you know, anything is possible. Like, if you just believe, like, if I can do it, you can do it, and like everything is great. And it's not.
Yeah. I feel like, you know, the USA and Western countries coming out, it's like, you know, District 1 and 2, and then it's so obvious that there's this propaganda that's taking place with the uniforms and the garb that that different countries are wearing. And I just, you know, I feel icky about it.
Yeah, it's all propaganda. I mean, like, that's the only reason why we have this coming togetherness for these athletes to compete, to show that we're all harmonious, and this is the one time and every so often where we can get together and we can agree on something, but we can show pride for, you know, people from our hometown. Like, it's all propaganda.
Right, but there's also something about, I wish that was really the case. Like, whenever I'm watching the Olympics, I do have this like odd sense of pride, and it's so strange how the visuals make me feel that. But again, going back to what you were saying and how we were talking about the individual athlete, there are so many athletes that I love and support on an individual basis, but then looking at them on a whole, it's like we're so privileged in the United States. Like, we're so privileged, and of course that's not the case for everybody, but when you look at it on this global scale, it's just interesting to watch how those visuals unfold and tell these different stories based on the perception of the country as a whole, quote unquote, I guess
this kind of lends itself well to conversations we've had about separating the art from the artist, separating the athlete from the country, the Olympic and Paralympic Committee. You know, they're also just making a living, and that's what they've decided to do with their life. And, you know, so many TikToks about Simone Biles, you know, it's like, I hope you know that this has nothing to do with you. Like, when I hate on America, like, it's nothing to do with Simone Biles.
Truly, yes. So this year, the athletes came out in Ralph Lauren garb once again, and the clothing items, so Ralph Lauren says, include technology of an added patented Ralph Lauren cooling system, which is a self-regulating temperature control device in the jacket. And Girl, I don't know about you, but this feels definitely like something Cinna would put in Katniss's jacket. So I'm just saying, like, we are not far off from the 75th annual Hunger Games. We also, interestingly, have Kim Kardashian stepping in, whose brand Skims is the official purveyor of athletic undergarments. So in an Instagram post from the beginning of July, Kim said, quote, "Ever since I was 10 years old, I've heard every single detail about the Olympics from my stepdad. As I would watch the athletes compete, I would grow up to understand the dedication and honor being a part of the Olympics embodied. I traveled with my stepdad and family to all different cities for the Olympic trials and the Olympic track meets of Caitlyn Jenner's, and every stop I would buy an Olympic t-shirt as a souvenir. When I received a call inviting Skims to be a part of Team USA, every moment I've spent admiring the strength and energy of Olympians from the sidelines came full circle. I am honored to announce that Skims is designing the official Team USA undergarments, pajamas, and loungewear for the athletes this year in Tokyo, and the same pieces will be available in a capsule collection at skims.com." So in thinking about visuals, Olympians, Paralympians, and of course the branding of it all, as we like to say, I think those of us who are interested in these things would naturally have some questions about these brands, public perception, going back to that propaganda. So in 2012, Ralph Lauren actually received a lot of heat due to their Olympic uniforms that were actually made in China. Since then, Ralph Lauren supposedly says they are committed to making better changes, and currently their website reads, quote, "Ralph Lauren identified a select group of partners from across the United States to create the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic team uniforms, from yarn to dye to finished garment." And quote, "We worked to use more sustainable materials and manufacturing practices across the Team USA collection." More than 30 US-based partners helped the brand manufacture the 2020 ceremony outfits, including companies like Roacom in El Paso, Texas, which manufactures the denim used in the garments, and Natural Fiber Welding in Peoria, Illinois, a startup that uses, quote, "natural sustainable materials" to make its line of performance products. So, I mean, that's cool, but I just still have questions about who's getting paid to do what. And this is great that it's on their website, but Ralph Lauren is still the major face of this, US American identity. So as far as Skims go, interestingly, it hasn't been made clear if Skims for the Olympic and Paralympics or otherwise items will be made in the US. And in fact, after looking at their collection online, which is available for anyone to purchase, the notes say imported, but don't disclose from where. So, Gianna, do we feel conflicted about this as usual? I mean, Skims, I do like their marketing visually. I do like that aesthetic. And their branding is inclusive appearing online, but of course that works in cahoots with the beauty standards that the Kardashians themselves actually set. So I don't necessarily know if they deserve praise for being inclusive when they have built our society to, cater to whatever they feel is trending at the time.
Well, I don't know. This is kind of how I put it, as myself and Audrey Kaminsky would put it. Like, I'm not here to hand out gold stars to you because you decided to do the bare minimum of portraying people in different types of bodies that you should already be doing. Like, sure, thank you for doing them. That's great. But I'm not going to give you a gold medal, but
right,
for doing that. Although it's great that we see that more and more, but I'm also not going to praise the Kardashians for setting any kind of inclusive standard when they themselves have tried to commodify and profit off of the aesthetic of women of color for a very long time, particularly Black women. So that's also kind of like a point of contention that I have with the Kardashians. That's my biggest point. But I don't, with Skims, I don't know. I mean, I have a pair of Skims. I bought some. I actually didn't like the ones that I bought. I don't really think that has anything to do with, they're a pair of Spanx. It's, whatever. I think a big part of Kim getting this contract, or Skims getting this contract, does have to do with that good story, right? About her being raised by an Olympic athlete. And I think that that's all great. We love a good story. I think the Olympics and Paralympics are built on that, especially that American propaganda.
Yeah.
You can have this dream too. Like, this is the American dream, right? Like, we have had this impact on your life, so let's pay it forward and give you this kind of contract. So none of that really surprises me.
Right. And the thing is like, why do I care what the Olympians' underwear looks like? I mean, that's my thing, is like, have we ever had an official sponsor of Olympic and Paralympic loungewear? I feel like loungewear in itself is such a trendy thing. I don't care what the Olympians and Paralympians are wearing, as long as they feel comfortable in it. Just, going back to the Norwegian team, as long as they don't feel exploited and sexualized in their uniforms. I just want you to compete the way you feel comfortable to do so.
Well, right. And we can't even do that for them.
This goes back to, this like American focus on capitalism and consumption. And you can be like one of the athletes. You can, we, the normal plebeians of the United States, can have a piece of that American Team USA uniform. So on the Ralph Lauren website, you can also buy some of the products from Team USA. But I did see that portions, if not all of the proceeds, go to supporting athletic organizations. So that was something that I did see on Ralph Lauren's website. But again, it's like, we're still buying from Ralph Lauren. They're still getting this like good deed out of the way for selling us, shit that we don't necessarily need. And then with Skims, I'm curious if other countries have this. Like, what is this doing for, one, the Kardashian brand globally? I'm sure it's just enhancing it. But I don't know what type of loungewear the team from France is wearing. You know what I mean? It's just so, do they have that? I guess I'm just interested in our American identity in particular, and the constant capitalist visuals and branding that we associate with everything. So is this happening in other countries across the board? Like, are there,
yeah. Well,
what is being sold as part of other Olympic and Paralympic teams?
And perhaps that is a little bit American centric of us to not have looked into also ahead of time, like, about those other kind of brand sponsorships. But it just is such a normalcy for us. Athletes are sponsored by brands, so it doesn't surprise me that the Olympics would take an opportunity, even if it is just like undergarments. It doesn't matter. They're still going to use that opportunity to have a branding moment.
Right. All right. On that note, we are going to take another little break. And whenever we come back, we are ending with a discussion on Olympic architecture and the displacement that this architecture takes on the toll of the citizens of the host country. Welcome back, everyone. So Gianna and I have been talking lately, and I feel like this is also a conversation that we're seeing a lot of kind of in different news outlets, different media circles, and online in particular as well, in thinking about Olympic architecture and the building and construction of these Olympic stadiums across the globe in various countries is really, really fascinating to watch how that all unfolds. And at the same time, while these constructions can be really beautiful and amazing, there's a lot of problems that take place in association with these buildings. And online, there's been a little bit of a discussion about not building a new Olympic and Paralympic stadium every single year that the Olympics take place, but rather having a few locations across the globe where the Olympic and Paralympic games just get rotated amongst, or trying to less frequently build these stadiums that sometimes inevitably are not of use after the games. So in particular, I was thinking about the bird's nest, which was used at the games in China. And the artist Ai Weiwei was actually one of the lead artistic consultants on the project. And he's come out a few years after the games and has said he wished he was never a part of that construction because he feels like it was accompanying basically just Chinese propaganda. And if you know Ai Weiwei, that's obviously not anything he wants to be associated with. So it's been really interesting to watch these stadiums also fall into disarray after the games. And a lot of the times they are not of use anymore. So in thinking about that as well, Gianna and I have also been talking about the displacement of actual people that comes with the building of these massive structures, which is they are and can be architectural and artistic works in themselves, but that doesn't mean that they are on the whole good.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I do get into kind of the data of it all, Bianca, as you suggested, of displacement caused by the Olympics, I'm going to read a passage from the Washington Post because it does lay out a really nice picture for us as to why these atrocities are caused. And that is because of our visual world and the perception that we must carry in these events. Quote, for governments of host cities and nations, the Olympic presents a once-in-a-generation opportunity to increase their prestige and international exposure, particularly in the decades since the highly profitable 1984 Los Angeles Olympics. Politician and business elites have seized upon the Games' potential to act as catalysts for development and the strengthening of the infrastructure, image, and even the cultural capital of the host city. Transforming a city for a global event to welcome swarms of media and tourists requires major urban upheaval, including building facilities, expanding transport networks, and upgrading infrastructure. Communities perceived as run down or inconsistent with the image of a modern, progressive international city are selected for rejuvenation or destruction, bearing the brunt of Olympic development projects. The rewards of such urban renewal or urban removal have been rarely shared equally. Disproportionately, those targeted for displacement have been poor, minorities, or otherwise vulnerable populations. Even after the Olympics and Paralympics are over, these development efforts have fed gentrification and rapidly rising poverty and rental prices, which have been driven in lower income brackets out of cities in mass second wave displacements. So you can also only imagine what the options are for community members that are being forced from their homes. You are given a minimal amount of money, if that. If you resist, you are threatened by governments or are physically beaten. You can also imagine that when the Olympics are hosted in countries with corrupt governments, like in Brazil, fighting back is life-threatening and terrifying. In South Korea, displaced children or people deemed as vagrants were forced into labor, rape, or murder when they were sent to what was called the Brothers' Home, a mountainside institution where some of the worst human rights atrocities in modern South Korea history took place. Of the 4,000 people who lived in Techwood, Atlanta, only 78 were able to return post-Olympics in 1996. Techwood, known as a historic district because it housed one of the United States' most prominent housing projects, it wasn't even the only area of displacement. An estimate of 30,000 people were displaced by the Olympics and Paralympics. A total of about 6,000 were evicted from their public housing. Unhoused Atlantans were forcibly removed from high-traffic Olympic areas, arrested, and literally bussed out of the city in masses to destinations like Alabama and Florida. But let's talk about Tokyo, as this is the second time the city has hosted the Olympics and Paralympics, with the first being in 1964. In total, 300 Tokyo households were relocated to make way for the games this year, including some who had already been displaced for the 1964 Tokyo Olympics. And this fact literally made no sense to me, because you already built the damn thing. Why are more being forcibly removed again? Mm-hmm. And I guess, I don't know, in the way that I was thinking of it, some kind of messed up silver lining for double hosting is that maybe no more pain would be caused. But alas, perception and modernism take precedence over all of that. So to get into the layout of it all, I did find another article called the Tokyo Weekend that broke it all down for us in terms of concept and layout. Tokyo 2020 is about honoring the Tokyo 1964 legacy while simultaneously looking to the future. This is represented in the two operational zones, the Heritage Zones, featuring several iconic venues used at the Tokyo 1964 Olympics, and the Tokyo Bay Zone, an urban development area showing how the city has grown since then. The two zones create an infinity symbol across the city. The Athletes' Village is the center point where the two zones meet. And I don't know, this is just kind of funny to me. So to break down kind of the layout of 1964, total venues used were 33. Out of those, 6 were already built before Tokyo tried to get the Olympics. 13 were new for the Olympics. 5 were reconstructed or renovated, and 8 were temporary.
Wow.
In 2020, 42 venues in total, including venues not even in Tokyo, are used. So 8 new venues, 10 temporary venues, 24 were already built, and at least 5 of those are legacy venues from 1964. The new Olympic Stadium will replace the National Stadium, which was used for the 1964 opening and closing ceremonies. So basically, the stadium that they used in 1964 was demolished, and they built an entire new one. So not so much of the displacement, I believe, took place from the stadium, but kind of breaking down those venues and how they did expand for primarily housing, I believe, is where most of that displacement is taking place.
Well, it's been really interesting as I'm watching the games. The NBC, I guess, graphics, they pull up that map of the city and they take you kind of across the city to pinpoint where different games are being held. And it's when you think about it, I think we tend to have this perception that it's just one stadium, right? Because that's a lot of what we see in terms of ceremonies, but that's not the case. I mean, it really encompasses an entire city.
Absolutely. The last thing I wanted to share was kind of in design and infrastructure. In 1964, the design mainly focused on the construction of the Metropolitan Expressway, which is that high-speed rail line in Japan. And then in 2020, now that Tokyo is a modern and mature city, the construction is primarily about these new venues, as the city's infrastructures is one of the best in the world. So I think it's really interesting that it's not even a secret about, you know, what their concept is about. It's about proving that they're the best, they're the modern, and it really is all about that perception, which makes it, I think, all the more just really hard for me to, I don't know, to consume or to support.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this is also just interesting in terms of what's happening politically across the United States with this infrastructure bill. And I think we have a games coming up in LA, I believe, within the next few years, like 2028 LA or something. And it's just, infrastructure does not mean displacement. And that should not be the priority of these Olympic Games. And it's so interesting to think how, you know, a lot of the times we do see infrastructure and modernization and art and architecture as a positive and cultural symbol for whatever place that's in. But when you think about it, not just as kind of a flat image, but as real life, you know, we have to take that into account as we think about these games. So it would be interesting to see if there's a plan put forth to kind of rotate throughout these kind of stable host cities. But of course, there would inevitably be probably a Western or quote unquote modernized view of who can host what Olympic Games and how is that fair. So this is definitely a very pressing issue. But you know, thinking about sustainability in our environment, like how can we keep rebuilding these cities for 2 weeks?
Well, and I didn't share it, but you know, like most big projects, they share a sustainability effort, or they kind of generally tell you the things that they're doing to like go green. And I didn't even bother really including that because it just seems like, you know, it just seems like anything.
Truly going green would mean not
literally blowing
not
up your entire
demolishing
stadium to build a new
multiple cities, right? Like you can put in whatever type of efficient materials.
You can put electric cars on your property to like drive the athletes around, but I'm not going to give you a gold star for doing that.
But that doesn't mean that it's necessary and that the whole process in itself isn't destructive. So yeah, really interesting. But I'm glad we were able to talk about the Olympics and Paralympic Games. I mean, I have been watching. I there is a part of me that is always curious about the Olympics, and I think it's so like the talent of the athletes again on that individual basis is truly incredible. But I hope that this conversation, you know, keeps us curious and keeps us putting forth those ideas about just how to constantly better this world of sports. So
yeah. Well, first Artpop Talk back.
Woo!
Did you guys miss us? It's okay if you didn't.
Oh, I missed you.
I missed you.
I missed the Artpop Talks.
Yeah, I did too.
Well, as always, you can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. We have a Facebook group called the Artpop Tarts where you can connect with each other and do a little, you know, networking, asking questions. And don't forget to go to hungryharvest.net to use code APT50 for 50% off of your first box of Hungry Harvest. They're a super awesome company and we're really excited to be working with them. And you can sign up for an APT newsletter. Just go to artpoptalk.com. And this month, we're going to be giving you all of the things to look forward to in August, what we'll be talking about, who we'll be talking with, and we'll give you all the stuff to be prepared for our conversations. So I'm really excited to be back. Thank you guys so much for listening.
All right, everyone. We will talk to you all next Tuesday.
Bye, everyone. Artpop Talk's executive producers are me, Bianca Martucci-Fink.
And me, Gianna Martucci-Fink.
Music and sounds are by Josh Turner, and photography is by Adrian Turner.
And our graphic designer is Sid Hammond.